Today, we're going to deconstruct a system of influence that's hiding in plain sight. You see, it's not about force, it's about engineering your own hesitation and using it against you. This is the deliberation trap.
Just let that sink in for a second. The most sophisticated prisons out there, they don't have any walls. They're just these mazes of endless options, and they're specifically designed to paralyze you. And this isn't some abstract philosophical idea, okay? This is a strategic reality in any high-stakes environment, from the boardroom to a personal negotiation.
So here's our roadmap for this briefing. First, we're going to identify the threat itself. Then, we'll unmask the self-deception that lets it work. After that, we'll map out its architecture, understand the biology behind it. And finally, I'm going to arm you with the protocol to reclaim your agency and own the clock.
So let's start with part one, the silent predator. You know, most of us think that being indecisive is some form of protection, right? Like it's a way to keep our options open. But in any power dynamic, it is the exact opposite. Your hesitation isn't a shield at all. It's a signal flare, basically screaming your location to anyone who knows how to leverage uncertainty.
Think about it. Every single time you say, "I just need more time," you're not really just deliberating. You're de-anchoring yourself from your own judgment. You're basically broadcasting your stress threshold, showing the other person the exact amount of pressure it takes to make you stall. It's a stress test on your own agency, and you better believe that anyone with a strategic mindset is watching, and they're waiting to see just how much ambiguity you can take before you hand over control.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is how this taps into our primitive brain. See, an unresolved decision creates what's called an open loop. It's this state of cognitive tension that our survival instincts basically interpret as an unseen threat. And what's your response? You freeze. You stay perfectly still, hoping the danger will just pass you by. But the predator, in this case, the slow, incremental loss of your own agency, is only getting closer.
And this brings us to section 2, which is all about how this becomes a personal delusion. I mean, we have all been there. That sudden stillness you feel when you're facing a huge choice. You tell yourself you're just thinking it through, gathering more data, being responsible. But is that what's really happening? This question is everything. While you think you're thinking, just take a second and notice what's actually going on. Your heart rate is probably climbing. You're obsessing over these tiny, improbable risks. You start outsourcing your own judgment, asking for opinions from people who have absolutely no skin in the game. This isn't prudence. This is the erosion of your executive sovereignty, and it's happening in real time. This slide just nails the disconnect. On the left, that's the story we tell ourselves, right? It's a noble story of wisdom and careful consideration. But on the right, that's the operational reality. You're not keeping your options open. You're suffering from what's called induced decision atrophy. You're letting your ability to act just wither away while other people are mapping the exact contours of your paralysis.
So here's how it really works. When someone gives you space to decide, what they're often doing is setting an ambiguity baseline. They are figuring out exactly how much uncertainty you can tolerate before you break. They aren't respecting your process, they're observing your breaking point. They are literally mapping your paralysis so they can use it as a net.
Okay, so let's get analytical for a minute. This whole thing, it's not a random event, it's a system. So now we're going to deconstruct the 4-stage loop that's designed to move you from being a decisive agent to a captured passenger, whose compliance actually feels like it was their own idea.
These are the 4 parts of the playbook: regret prime, entropy expansion, strategic atrophy, and the default anchor. It's a seamless process, and it doesn't start with a push. No, it starts with the illusion of benevolent support.
Now here's the leverage point. It all starts with the regret prime. The influencer doesn't tell you what to do, they do the exact opposite. They'll say things like, "Hey, this is a huge decision, you shouldn't rush it." Or, "I just want to make sure you've considered every single angle." This concerned framing targets your brain's conflict monitoring center, the Anterior Cingulate Cortex, and it activates your deep-seated fear of making the wrong choice. They are literally building a neurological map of what you're most afraid of losing.
Right, so once your fear is primed, they kick off stage 2, entropy expansion. They start getting helpful. They send you articles. They suggest just one more meeting. They introduce new variables and last-minute concerns. Look, this isn't meant to clarify things for you. It's meant to overwhelm your cognitive load. It creates this intense tension. It's like a mix of dopaminergic hunger for the reward of a final answer and cortisol overload from the stress. Your brain starts to crave resolution, any resolution, just to end the pain of all that ambiguity.
And this is where the trap closes. In the strategic atrophy stage, your brain makes a critical, and I mean fatal error.
It starts to equate waiting with safety. You stop taking initiative. You silence your own gut feeling because it feels way too risky. You become passive, all just to stay consistent with this careful deliberator persona that they helped you create. You're basically trying to wait out a storm that's being generated by the person holding the fan.
And finally, we get to the default anchor. This is the moment where control shifts completely. The influencer isn't just an advisor anymore. They are the source of your reality. They're the one you look to for permission to act. You stop checking in with your own preferences and you start looking to them to tell you when the time is right. The power balance is flipped from proactive choice to reactive compliance. You are now officially the passenger and they are holding the keys.
So now that we've mapped the system, let's get into why it's so incredibly effective, even on really smart, high-performing people. It's because this trap doesn't create a new vulnerability. No, it exploits deep-seated logic that's already hardwired into our biology. So let's look at the raw mechanics here.
So, as this chart shows, the trap works because of a core principle called loss aversion. Decades of research show us that the psychological pain of a loss feels roughly twice as strong as the pleasure of an equivalent gain. So when you're facing a choice between two pretty good options, your brain doesn't just see two potential wins. It sees choosing one as actively losing the other. And that feeling of loss is a powerful, powerful brake on taking action.
And look, it's not just one bias at play here. They all stack on top of each other. Loss aversion gets amplified by something called the endowment effect, where we emotionally overvalue any option we're currently considering, which makes it even harder to let go. Then, to deal with all that internal discomfort, we use cognitive dissonance. We tell ourselves the lie, "Oh, I'm just being thorough," when we're actually just being managed by fear. And all of this is powered by the heuristic of perfection, that fatal false belief that if we just wait long enough, the perfect risk-free path is going to magically appear.
All right, so we've diagnosed the problem, we've mapped the architecture. Now let's pivot to the solution. And this is not about thinking harder or gathering more data. It's about shifting your entire operational framework. This is the counter protocol.
So this protocol is built on 3 pillars. Threshold activation, to break that analysis paralysis. Binary expiration, to reclaim control of your time. And finally, building an action bias, to prove your agency can never, ever be frozen by doubt.
Okay, step 1 is you have to actively fight that urge for perfection. When you feel that need for more data, you have to introduce resistance. This is threshold activation. And you do this through something behavioral scientists call satisficing calibration. Basically, instead of searching for the mythical perfect path, you deliberately identify the good enough path. This simple act lowers the metabolic cost of the choice, it short-circuits the fear loop, and it restores blood flow to your brain's executive centers.
This question right here is your weapon. Memorize it. Use it. The absolute moment you feel yourself starting to freeze up, you ask this. It forces a decision. It collapses all that ambiguity into a single data point, and it breaks the paralysis loop instantly. It is a cognitive kill switch for the hijack. It's how you get back in control.
And the final steps complete the strategy. Next, you impose a binary expiration. You frame the delay not as wisdom, but as what it really is. It's either a period of growth or a period of decay. It is never, ever neutral. Set a hard, unmovable deadline. And finally, you build an action bias. Make a decisive choice, even a small one, and just commit to correcting your course later if you need to. You have to prove first and far off to yourself that your agency cannot be captured by doubt.
And this brings us to the ultimate takeaway. The entire system we've just deconstructed, this whole architecture of the hijack, it all hinges on the manipulation of one single critical resource: time.
The person who can make you wait for the perfect answer is the person who controls the outcome. In any strategic environment, true authority doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from the capacity to act under uncertainty. And simply being aware of these mechanics, knowing about the hijack loop, the biological triggers, the delusion of prudence, that awareness itself is what collapses the system. Awareness is your immunity.
Because ultimately, the game isn't about finding the perfect path that's already laid out in front of you. It's about having the sovereignty to lay the first stone and the next one and the one after that. It's about building the road as you walk.